Everyone, and welcome into Thinking About DFS. Mattek and Jakob Sanderson. Every week, we go game by game through the main slate for NFL Daily Fantasy, mostly using DraftKings. We have mentioned a couple FanDuel prices if they really stick out, but FanDuel won't let me in, Jacob. Every time I try and play on FanDuel, it's the bar pretty low to get me to wager on something, but asking me to reset my password every time I need to log in, it doesn't work for me. Maybe I'm leaving money on the table. People insist I am leaving money on the table, but there we are. How did week 3 go for you? Did you find your way into any Juwan Jennings lineups?
No, week 3 was pretty tilting for me, to be honest. I only played 2 lineups. One of them looked great. I was sitting in the SPY with a Goddard, a Dunze start. I was feeling like I was looking at Goddard. I'm like, he scored about 1 million more points than any other tight end. Like this looks pretty good. And I was debating because I also had Kamara in the lineup, who was fine, but got massively outscored by Saquon Barkley. And I originally my lineup was a Geno JSN with HN bring back and then a little bit of chalk around that. And I was like, should I just swap to like Lamar and all the chalk pieces and just coast on Goddard, or should I not? And I was debating, and I basically just like ran the clock out on myself. Like I was like debating, and then it was like 3:04, and I was like, fuck it, I'll roll with it. And like had I swapped, I would have played Mason instead of Ayuk, and I would have played Deontay instead of Gibbs, and I would have had Lamar, and I would have had Charbonnet instead of HN, and my lineup would have scored like 60 more points than the lineup that I actually played. So I would have had a really good finish with the swap lineup. The other lineup finished literally 1 spot out of the min cash, which I didn't think was conceivable with a Goddard lineup, but everyone did so incredibly badly. Like Ayuk was just getting body bagged by Jennings. Miami ruined everything in that entire game. I got that easily one of the more tilting Sundays of DFS that I had experienced. I hated every single minute of it.
I thought Kyron would be well owned more than A-Chain, and it was completely the other way around. A-Chain ended up being the fancy play. Yeah, so I got that wrong. So that cost me on some swaps. I actually swapped from Kyron to A-Chain on a couple.
Yeah, had I known that Kyron would have been the less owned party, obviously I would have happily played him. I agree with you on that. And then I don't think I was ever actually going to play Jennings, so I'm not really kicking myself up on that. But I was very, very close to playing. I was definitely considering playing Kyron. I was like about a second away from playing Deontay, and potentially Lamar. So those were all pretty. And Charbonnet almost played too. So,
well, luckily we get to do it all again this week. So we are going to go game by game, and we are going to begin with a game that last week, Jacob, this would have been a big old game. The New Orleans Saints against the Atlanta Falcons. We have a team total of 19.75 for New Orleans, 22.5 for Atlanta. Feels
low.
I was going to say it feels like a little low for this game. But I mean, that's what we got with the New Orleans Saints last week. The New Orleans Saints reverted to type in that game. Alvin Kamara right now is listed as being banged up. He did not practice on Wednesday. I'm expecting him to go. But look at these. I mean, outside of the 2 running backs, I am going to guess this number on Olave. I'm going to guess that 17% projected ownership will be a smidge low. I was pretty adamant about Olave last week, less adamant this week. Darnell Mooney at 4.4K with like a literal 95% route share, more targets than Pitts. He and Olave do look like the plays from this game for me.
Yeah, I guess I'm starting to see why the total gets this low, because the Saints were negative PROE each of the first 2 weeks. I'm straight stealing this from Gretsch. And then they also go really low PROE last week, except instead of you being like, well, they're way up, they weren't, and they kind of blew the game doing that. And so you start to think maybe it's just more of an ideological thing.
That is the Shanahan thing. It's so funny. Everyone wants to talk all breathlessly about the Shanahan thing, but Shanahan offenses are efficient at passing, but they are not pass happy in any way.
No, I mean, this was aggressive. Like, I think the platonic ideal of the Shanahan offense is like a -3 PROE.
Yeah.
But this was the Saints have been living in like the -9 PROE world where it's like you're kind of Arthur Smithing it up out there. And no one complains about it when you're hitting these 60-yard explosive play action passes. But when those go away, all of a sudden they start to look pretty boring. They also have now lost 2 starters on the offensive line. They're struggling with Ruiz and McCoy out. That seems like it's probably going to hurt the run game, the pass game, everything. And then on the other side, Atlanta's been the run heaviest team in the league. I don't know if it's just like an organized, there's something in the water. If it's
I think it's protecting
injury.
Cousins. Yeah, my guess is that it's protecting Cousins.
Yeah, the ghost of Arthur Smith still haunts the halls of the Mercedes-Benz stadium because it's not getting any better. So I guess if both these teams are just going to run the shit out of the ball, that's probably going to keep the total down.
Bijan or Kamara, you can only play one. They're basically the same price, basically projected the same. Which one do you prefer?
Yeah, this is just like pure bias, but like obviously I'm gonna play Bijan because I like him more.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because Kamara, I think we saw last week, he doesn't. Obviously, I think he still will be more efficient than the average NFL running back, but at his age, it's just a little bit more difficult to project. Like he had 26 rushes and 3 targets last week and didn't get to 100 scrimmage yards. You know?
Yeah, like I played him in my spy lineup, and it obviously felt bad because he scored like 16 points. But then you look at it and you're like, well, the process was fine. He got 26 and 3. That's what I paid for it. He just didn't find the end zone. But yeah, certainly I think what you aren't getting out of him, you know, he can still have explosives, I guess, in the passing game. For sure. We saw that in the Dallas game. I think what you're not going to get out of him, you're not going to get the 65-yard Saquon Barkley run, right? You're not even going to get the 28-yard Jonathan Taylor run. You know, Bijan obviously could deliver that. Kamara, I think it's going to have to come.
And Taysom is back this week, so you're not. I don't even think you're locked in to getting the 3-yard touchdowns either.
That was one of the reasons I was excited to play him last week, because I thought that was like kind of an underrated thing that the projections would pick up, but like that the hand builders might not consider. Yeah, so I'm in on Bijan, I guess, in the spot. London's role, the Mooney thing is interesting because what he has is a really, really fun role, because London is like kind of just the chain mover. Like everything between like 8 and 15 yards, that's Drake London's domain. And then when they're doing the like quick screen run option stuff,
all Mooney.
That's Mooney. And then when they're going really deep, that's sometimes Pitts, but that's also usually Mooney. So he has this kind of fun role combination of getting most of the deep stuff and most of the short stuff. It's like the short stuff is him or Bijan, and the deep stuff's him or Pitts. And London's in this kind of like fine-ish role.
I saw someone write it up that he's in the Nakua role from the Rams offense that Zach Robinson helped construe, but the volume isn't as good. Like if the volume was Rams level good, you'd be feeling, and he's not. But Drake London also is kind of not that great after the catch secretly, which Puka obviously
is kind of slow.
Yeah, Puka and Kupp actually both very good after the catch in a way that that Kyle Pitts and Drake London are not. All right,
Drake London is probably just Michael Pittman.
Yeah, a much more interesting game. We have Cincinnati. We have Cincinnati, and we have Carolina. Cincinnati and Carolina. This game is awesome, I think.
Andy Dalton revenge game.
Andy Dalton revenge game. 2 pretty bad defenses. You know, I think the thing last week is that the Raiders just put up, you know, basically no fight. But I don't think the Carolina defense projects to be, you know, really all that good. So we've got Burrow. We've got Chase. We got Moss. We've got Hubbard, Deontay Johnson. I do think Dalton, in the context of this NFL, where we don't have any 300-yard games, you know, I think $5,300 Andy Dalton. I've seen worse plays. I've seen worse DFS plays, and T. Higgins is like the leverage play of all leverage plays of all time. Doesn't mean he's going to get there. My guess is he's going to sim pretty bad, but man, he was out there. He was running the routes. Burrow's shown with the Yoshi Boss stuff, like he can just give anyone 2 touchdowns if he wants to. They're calling the touchdown plays for Yoshi Boss, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, that was what I was going to bring up. I think T. Higgins is my early candidate for Gold Star Play of the Week. I I know he didn't score well in that Monday night game, but he looked good. He made 2 of the best non-catches you'll see. There was the one touchdown where the ball was thrown a little too high. He reaches up, grabs it, gets 1 foot down, but couldn't quite get the other one before his butt hits out of bounds. And then there's the other one on the sideline where like it was kind of a back shoulder that he like spun around and he caught it one-handed and just couldn't drag the second foot. But like he looked on both of those plays like extraordinarily athletic. He looked like T. Higgins. Like it didn't seem like he was like laboring around with a bum hamstring or anything. So I think he's T. Higgins, which is, you know, it's going to be the T. Higgins scoring distribution. Sometimes it's not going to be there. Sometimes all of a sudden out of the blue, when you least expect it, it's going to be 8, 120 and 2. So I'm very in on him at a sub 6K price with projected 5% ownership. That's like always when I think you want to play T. Higgins. So very in on that play. And then, yeah, I mean, Moss is unfortunately worthy of the ownership.
No, Moss,
I think
Moss
we've
might
been
be
kind of proven.
He might be the best play of the slate, really.
Yeah, like I think if you watch the Washington game and you were Chase Brown slappy all summer, like you were wrong in the sense that Zach Moss obviously has the better role, but I think that you're justified in being annoyed. Like we didn't see anything from Chase Brown that suggests like he's deservedly playing not enough. Like he actually looked great in that game.
He had a good.
Zach Moss looks good enough that I don't see the role switching anytime soon.
He had a good blitz pickup. Chase Brown did. I think he averaged 6.7 yards per carry. I will say Moss earned his stripes in 2 ways in that game, though, in a way that clearly the coaches aren't going to change. One was the change of field run where the play was completely blocked. He was going to go down and he basically just like waited a second and realized there was a lane on the other side of the field and got all the way around. And then the touchdown was the same thing where it was like a worse running back probably would have just gone down and tried to force through the pile. And then he realized that if he took the other lane, he was going to score. Moss, I mean, Brown, I think, has looked good enough for like your seasonal bags. Like, well, yeah, sure. He's just like, you definitely rather have Chase Brown than Blake Corum right now. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Like, and Brown can score a long touchdown at any point. The question I have for you is, what are we doing with like Giga Chalk, Deontay Johnson, and did we fly close enough to the sun last week with Xavier Legette and now with Adam Thielen on the IR? Can we justify, you know, chalk all around him, and then your one-off is Xavier Legette? I think yes.
What's with this price, man? Why is it like always high? I don't understand. Like, what the hell is this?
This is what they do. This is what DraftKings does. They are very good at adjusting guys up. So when a guy does well, they're pretty good at adjusting his salary up. But when guys routinely are bad, they don't adjust their prices down enough. Like, and he started off.
We got Rome Odunze last week at 4.2. And people weren't even playing that. Like, that's why I'm so annoyed that I bricked the rest of the slate. Because I'm like, that was a generational wealth opportunity to get Rome Odunze at 4.2K and not 80% ownership. But like, how do we have 4.2 Odunze last week, top 10 pick in the draft, and then freaking Xavier Legette is like, no, we can never put him under 4.5. Like, that would be a hate crime.
Because the algo knows Andy Dalton is going to cook.
I guess. So anyway, yeah, I want to play Legette here because I do think he's going to have like 80% of the routes, and I'm a believer in him, but it's not going to project well at that cost. So it's pretty aggravating. I think he's like maybe a mix. Maybe just like a guy you add to the pool, you boost his projection by 1 or by 2.
I was going to say, project him for what. Give him Yoshi Boss. Give him 9.5 points, like what Yoshi Boss projects for. And obviously he works well paired with Dalton because I mean, we saw on the he actually lost focus for a second and was not able to come down with the 2-point conversion. But you know, that's kind of how you expect him, I think, to get used as a young player.
Well, on the other play, he looked great, right? He runs that little stop route over the ball between the linebackers. Yep. Awesome throw by Dalton to fit it in right between them. And he just gets it and turns upfield and goes. He looked as advertised athletically. So hopefully, like, that looked like a guy to me where, you know, you're going to have Deontay as sort of the intermediate chain moving guy. I look at that play from Legette and I'm like, why is he not getting 3 tunnel screens a game, right? Like, he looked straight up just really athletic. So But yeah, he's everybody in this game. I think is a pretty interesting play. Are you going to play Chalk Deontay Johnson? I think I know the answer to this from Davis Mattek.
If I end up doing Andy Dalton or even Burrow T, if I end up on Sunday morning doing a Burrow T, I think I probably will. Yeah, it's a pretty good price. I just I need to think a little bit more about is because the interesting thing with these older quarterbacks, we saw it last year with Flacco, we saw it this year with Dalton, and I've been thinking about this in the context of the multiple defenses that are being projected and all that, is these guys have seen everything. Andy Dalton, Matt Stafford, Joe Flacco, these 35-year-old guys, they were around, Jacob, at the beginning of the cover 2. They saw the first iteration of it when they were young players. That was kind of the dominant defense being played in the NFL, was the 2 high safeties. Now, it was less multiple then. Defenses were disguising themselves worse. But it's Andy Dalton knows how to throw a Tampa 2 beater. He's been doing that, since he was in high school, probably. In a way that these guys haven't. All right, the Rams and the Chicago Bears. God, this could be a really good game, or this could be some of the worst football we've ever seen. And it really comes down to, do the Rams have anyone who can get open? And can we get a good game from Caleb? I was intrigued by some of the throws that Caleb made last week. The raw numbers are definitely painting over some of the cracks because they ran 90 plays on offense. Yeah. I'm expecting Keenan to play this week. Kyren is an absolute giga smash. Kyren's got the best role in the NFL right now at the running back position. They give him he gets all the touchdowns, all that stuff. Moore, I do like. He's a little expensive, and I am out, I think, on these Rams wide receivers. I see a 10% ownership projection on Atwell, and it's sure, he gets there if he catches his 60-yard bomb. If he doesn't catch that 60-yard bomb, he is not generating any points. Rams, Bears, what do you got?
So the Rams, with their wide receivers last week, they had Atwell actually become close to a full-time player. Demarcus Robinson, of course, remains a full-time player. And they had Johnson and Whittington basically split. So, yeah, with that mix, Atwell's the one you want straight up. But 10% ownership is a little bit tough to stomach, I think. If you're telling me, if I had to play a Rams wide receiver and it's 4.8K for Atwell at 10%, or it's 5.1K for Robinson at less than 1%, I think, clearly less than 1% is the way to go. But I'm not sure I'll play any Rams.
I'm not playing any of these guys. The Bears defense is good. The Bears defense wants to ugly these games up. I think I'm out.
Yeah. I think the only Ram you want to play is Kyren. You could always play cheap Colby Parkinson if you want to. That's fine. And then from the Bears side, it's tough because we have the Odunze breakout. And I think, it'll be tempting to want to play him after that. Gets up in price and Keenan comes back. And at least the projections think nobody's going to play him again, which is interesting because I'm staring at 5.2K Rome Odunze right now with a 0.56 projected ownership. I don't think that'll be correct. I think it'll be higher than that. Just purely
with Keenan in, he's going to project really bad. Rome is going to project really bad.
And the question is whether he should, right? So there's a lot of different ways this could go. Cole Kmet finally kind of dusted Gerald Everett last week. And then the question is, with Keenan coming back, does Keenan just play the DeAndre Carter role, or does he take Rome off the field, or do they run more 11 personnel? What's going to be the situation? My read on this, or at least my just guess on this, / what I want to be true, and I think would be very actionable in DFS if it was true, is DeAndre Carter was already playing a lot. They were already passing out of 11 most of the time. I think Keenan's just going to step into that role and maybe get more targets on it. I think Rome is still going to run a lot of routes. He just had this breakout game, top 10 pick. Nobody's going to play him. I'm in. I'm going to just go right back to the well and gold star him for the second straight week in a game against a pretty beatable secondary. I'll play Rome at top.
I really like that. That is such non-2024 DFS, being I actually am going to trust what my eyes just saw instead of trusting the projections. I like that. I like that angle a lot. Bears running backs, totally not messing with that. We were very right last week to not fall for DeAndre Swift as a quote unquote sleeper. Kyron is like a potential every lineup guy at 7,300 for me. Like he gets it all. He's running routes. It's really unbelievable.
I am worried that he might pick up a back injury from carrying our primetime team. But
I know it's unbelievable. This right here, I think, is my favorite game. I'm assuming that Jordan Love plays. Minnesota team total of 20.5. That feels low. Green Bay team total of 23.5. That feels low for me as well. I'm very in on Jefferson. I'm very in on, I think you can play Reid teams. I know that Brian Flores is like a fucking madman and made CJ Stroud look awful last week. Aaron Jones is a great play. Probably not doing the Jacobs thing, but Jaden Reed at $6,000. Jacob, something we got wrong, well, at least I got this wrong over the offseason, is the idea that Jaden Reed is like kind of a part-time player, could lose routes to Wicks, could lose routes to Watson. I now think Reed is the clear number one, like clearly their best player. And Dobbs and Watson are going to be the ones who lose. In fact, Watson is already losing routes to Wicks, and I think Dobbs will start to lose routes.
Dobbs isn't losing any routes yet. He's fucking running those things.
He is. But, something else I'd like to say is I think LaFleur, like, it's become such a meme, like, oh, he coach a year, whatever. I think it's incredibly hard to do what he did in this modern NFL where these guys can't really practice to totally redesign your offense in a week.
It's insanely good. Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah. So I think he's a good coach.
LaFleur is so good that I'm almost ready to admit that there's like some sort of appeal that Romeo Dobbs has in the real life NFL that I just can't appreciate. Because
great run blocker, steady hands.
Because I don't understand why he runs any routes for this fucking team when they have 3 other wide receivers who I think are actually good. But Matt LaFleur is so good that I'm like, you've earned the benefit of the doubt like so hard. Like if the grand bargain is that you get to be a brilliant offensive mind who can save Malik Willis, but we just have to deal with Romeo Dobbs running 90% of the routes every week for reasons we can't fully comprehend. Sure, man. I guess that's just what makes it go. So, yeah, I think, anyway, you're obviously not playing Romeo Dobbs, but, yeah, we're definitely playing Jaden Reed. You're definitely playing Justin Jefferson. Aaron Jones, this feels like a spot where they're going to be focusing on getting him usage inside the 10 and his return to Lambeau.
Dude, the play that he scored on last week, beautiful play. Justin Jefferson lines up in the backfield. He lines up in the slot. They fake it. That was a beautiful play to get Jones a touchdown last week.
Like, revenge games, it's sometimes like a joke where they always say just revenge game against anyone who's going against their former team. And 80% of the time, it's just like he chose to leave in free agency for no reason. Like, this is an actual revenge game, right? Aaron Jones was under contract for the Packers on a reasonable deal. And the Packers were like, yeah, Aaron Jones, yeah, sure, you're a franchise legend and a team leader. We would rather pay additional money and take on additional years to upgrade from you to Josh Jacobs. Screw you and everything you've done for us. And he said, awesome. I'm going to your division rival so I can play you 2 times a year. Fuck you guys. So this is like the most actual revenge game spot that I can imagine.
Well, it's like the stuff with Diggs last week. Diggs got 3 targets on their first 2 drives because he demanded it. He's like, I want to score against this team.
And Aaron Jones, I don't think is an asshole. So I don't think he would ever be the type to be like, feed me the rock. But I do think he's so likable that I could easily see Kevin O'Connell, all the guys, all the offensive linemen, when they get inside the 5 this week, they're going to want Aaron Jones to get a touchdown and to put his sombrero on and to do a Lambeau leap that strikes me as a thing that's going to happen. So I think you've got to manually adjust the projection on Aaron Jones' touchdowns this week for revenge game based factors. If that's not,
I think he's such a good play. He's potentially like a cash game guy. I just think he's locked in to being a great play. And I think you can do Love, Reed, Jefferson. I don't know if I would do Jones and Jefferson together. it's been a weird thing with Jefferson where he's been obviously like unbelievable, scores the 97-yard touchdown. He's got a touchdown in 3 straight games, but Darnold has not topped 28 pass attempts yet. So like the 11 reception, 150-yard game has not happened for Jefferson yet in a weird way.
That's because no one can play with them.
Yeah. No one can play with them. Yeah. I completely agree. I read, I guess it's not fair for a guy who's projected for 11% ownership to be my gold star play, so I'll have to keep sorting. But Jones and Reid are complete standout plays from this game.
I think Darnold is fine too. I know he's at 2%, but
yeah,
we have a good enough sample on KOC that I don't think he's like, he's not Andy Reid, but he's not a guy that is going to be like run heavy in a stubborn way like even Kubiak was last week. To me, he's just in a spot where they've just been blowing teams out of the stadium every single week. And so by the time they get to the fourth quarter, they're not going to throw a lot of passes. But I think if the Packers can solve this Brian Flores defense and they start throwing at a high rate, like I think that the Vikings, like if they come into this game, they're down 7 in the fourth quarter, like they'll throw. I think they will. And so I think Darnold is totally in play, especially at 2% with Jefferson.
Runs a little bit. Had 32 rushing yards in week 1. You've always got those outs. All right, I'm fascinated by this game.
15% touchdown rate.
Yeah. Jacksonville traveling at Houston. So Houston just gets ran out of the building.
Last game.
Yeah. So Houston gets ran out of the building last week by the Vikings and Brian Flores. CJ Stroud doesn't know what's up, doesn't know what's down. We saw the Buffalo Bills absolutely murder this defense and actually learn something interesting from the broadcast, which is that the Jaguars, Jacob, are like the one team in the NFL that is not doing the zone coverage meta. They lead the NFL in man-to-man snaps. So basically they put their corners out on an island and they say, win your battle, which then turned into every Buffalo Bill just like dunking on them. Just Josh Allen drops back and he's like, wow, these guys are wide open. Let's just score some tuds. The CJ Stroud lineups did not work last week, although the Diggs call was pretty close. I'm completely going back to the well this week, and no Jaguars bringbacks either for me. I think you're right. I think this is the Doug Peterson sayonara game. So I'm doing Stroud, Nico, Diggs. We'll see if Dell is healthy for this game. He did not practice on Wednesday. If he does, I'm going to be mixing and matching all these guys. It's probably a preference for Dell over Diggs just based on price, but Stroud doubles are in full effect again this week.
I hope Dell plays because if he doesn't, there's going to be this weird DFS effect where, as soon as Dell goes out, the projection starts to look way better on Diggs and Nico. And then because the projection looks way better on Diggs and Nico, even though Stroud is objectively a worse play without Dell, people are going to want to play him more because everyone's going to want to play Diggs and Nico. And then the double stacks just start to build themselves and the ownership gets out of control, even though they just lost one of their best playmakers. So I'm really hoping Dell plays for that reason because I want to play this spot on the Houston side. I agree with you on Jacksonville. The only guy I would play from Jacksonville if I was going to do a bring back would be Christian Kirk. Last week, they have to play their first game where they know Evan Ingram isn't going to play. It seems like huge
difference between how shitty Kirk was in week 2 versus what he did in week 3 where they knew all week Ingram wasn't playing.
Yeah, and also Kirk is the kind of guy who gets the kind of targets that you see in comeback mode, right? Like he's running underneath all these slot routes. So if they do get blown out of the stadium again, he can easily rack up, 3, 4, 5 targets in garbage time, kind of like he did against the Buffalo Bills. So yeah, I like the Stroud side here for sure in the spot against Jacksonville. And yeah, they look like they just quit on Monday night. I feel like this feels like it's a funeral game for Peterson, for Press Taylor, and then they come back and they win their 11th straight game in Jacksonville over the Colts under the new coach next week.
Who this Press Taylor guy? I don't know anything about him. What is his
Zach
deal?
Taylor's
Why is
brother?
Oh, okay. Well, that explains a lot. That explains quite a bit. Yeah, it just feels like he doesn't get it at all. Feels like it's a very bad offense. It's very static. No one moves before the snap. It's a lot of first down runs. I don't know. Brian Thomas Jr. is like the only interesting player. but he's more expensive than a Dunze. We're not getting any kind of discount. And you're right, he's unlikely to be targeted in any sort of come from behind. It's like all Gabe Davis. All Christian Kirk. And Kirk is 5,200. I mean, he's just a good play, which it's annoying, but like he is like a pretty good play on full PPR DraftKings.
Do you want to know one other thing that you might not enjoy about Press Taylor? Do you know where Press Taylor was born?
I do. I know because I literally just pulled his Wikipedia page up.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
he went to so he's born in Norman. Does that mean Zach Taylor's born in Norman?
Might be. Let me look.
Well, now I got it. Now I'm very interested.
Yeah. He was born in Norman, Oklahoma.
So they all were born in Norman, and none of them went to Oklahoma. And in fact, went to Nebraska. Zach Taylor went to Nebraska.
Well, first he went to Wake Forest, it looks like, and then he went to Nebraska.
Wow, Zach Taylor went to the same high school as my dad and his brothers.
Wow.
We are finding out some new information. That is, wow. And another confluence with my life. A bunch of my friends from high school played college football at Butler Community College, where Zach Taylor was the coach. So we are learning some information here on the program.
I also just learned we have so many Zach Taylor connections on this program. Zach Taylor apparently was on the practice roster for the 2007 Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So he was living in Winnipeg for an entire year, and I had no idea.
So Zach Taylor, after he gets fired, is clearly going to be a friend of the show. Luckily, we have a game. We have a game that has not one play. The Pittsburgh Steelers traveling to play at the Indianapolis. Well, that's not true. Najee,
there's plenty of plays. Well, there's two. There's two plays.
Najee, if Jalen, I'm assuming Jalen does not go. Najee is,
he's not going to go.
Yeah, he's 5,600. Actually, he's probably a better play than Moss. Actually, if
do these
Jalen
projections
doesn't
already take into account Warren being out or not yet?
I'm assuming it does because Patterson is projected for 6. Yeah, so 18, okay. but the ownership is not because the ownership is done.
Can't be right.
So the ownership will be done. I think rotogrinders does an early run on Wednesday, and then they do another run on Friday afternoon before Sunday.
Okay.
But the point projection is pretty clearly there. And then, can I interest you in a literal 0% own Anthony Richardson? Because I'm a little right now in the underdog battle royale drafts. He's the quarterback 16. Like literally, no one wants this guy. No one wants him.
Yeah, I think it makes sense because if you watched him last week, you are like unclear how he was ever drafted. Nevertheless, 4th overall. And B, no one has done anything offensive on the Steelers. So I totally get the reasons why he'll be like 0% owned. But I do kind of think Richardson, not unlike his opponent in this game, is the kind of quarterback where you probably shouldn't really worry about matchups that much. Like
the matchup, literally, he could get 5 points playing 7-on-7, or he could get 35 against the 85 Bears. It is completely immaterial.
Right. Like it's basically just, does he hit on a long pass? Does he hit on a long run? Like you're just kind of playing Plinko every week. So I think you're probably better just playing Richardson every time he's low owned and fading every time he's highly owned than trying to like analyze the specifics of the matchup that he's going to hit. So Richardson should be in your pool at the very least. Najee, just like a good play. What would be the highest ownership where you would say no thanks?
If he gets higher than Moss and Aaron Jones, like if Najee ends up being the highest projected ownership guy on Sunday, I can probably just be like, really, Najee is not that dissimilar from week 2 Mason or week 3 Cam Akers, and we saw those range of outcomes. Week 2 Mason, you had to have him. He nutted out.
Yeah.
He made every lineup work. Cam Akers last week, who we talked about extensively, scored a touchdown, but still did not get there because the game went away from him. Like if Najee doesn't score, Fields doesn't throw the ball to the running backs enough to like get him the PPR scam work to like what is his max without a touchdown? Like 15 probably.
Yeah, something in that range for sure. Because Because, yeah, he's not going to have more than like 3 catches. And then the other guy who is just a great play, although my issue is I just the way that playing DFS works, I'd always rather play a pocket quarterback in a stack because then you have to get fewer things right versus just playing a one-off solo dolo Justin Fields and then having to get everything else right. But if Najee's going to come in super highly owned and then you get rushing touchdown leverage equity with Fields, he's going to project fantastic in this spot against Indianapolis. So I think he's certainly in play. And if you want to get really crazy, I'll do it. I'll do it at least once. I'll do the Fields pick and stack.
I was going to say, I actually think if Najee ends up being 28% owned and Pickens is going to be 8% owned and Fields is going to be 7% owned ish, roughly, then Fields Pickens, especially at Pickens price, is just a jam.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll do the Fields Pickens. And then I don't even think you need to bring it. I don't think you necessarily need to bring back. Alec Pierce has gotten expensive now, and that's like the only interesting Colt to play. So, I mean, you could play Taylor, like his role is great, but not in this matchup for me.
Sure. Yeah. And he's not getting enough of the work. Like they're not playing him on passing downs. They're not always playing him at the goal line. It just doesn't, it's just not quite there. And luckily for us, another game here with basically 2 1.5 playable guys, Denver against the New York footballing Jets. What do we got here?
I play Breece Hall for sure. And that's probably the only guy I will play.
Not interested at all in Garrett Wilson. Sub 7,000, sub 5% owned. No interest.
Can you just do it once for me? Like I don't know. I would be interested if it was not this matchup. I guess I do legitimately believe in Surtain, and I think that the Jets are probably going to win this game pretty easily. So sure. I think that they're going to have like 27 pass attempts, and I think Wilson will still earn like a reasonable target share, but I don't think it's going to be like a 40% target share in this matchup. So I think we're going to see like 27 pass attempts, and Wilson's going to have like 7 or 8 targets. And
but he could score. He could score twice, right? They are running the end zone stuff for him.
Yeah, very possible. I mean, I hope that it happens. I'm very exposed to Garrett Wilson.
8 for 66 and 2 in this economy. That is making the optimal, I think.
Yeah, I think we're going to get 4 for 53 and 0 and more people being mean to me on Twitter.
Oh God, that is rough. Yeah, I mean you are right though, and to be honest, I don't even love Breece here. Like I don't because I just don't know how Denver is able. I know Denver did beat Tampa Bay last weekend, and Knicks looked a little bit better, but it feels like the Jets, like the Robert Saleh defense, they will be more. What I kept seeing was like there was just no discipline by the Buccaneers defense. They just kept letting Bo Nix run for first downs. Felt like every time that game came on, it was just Bo Nix running for a first down. Like what was that was crazy. The Jets are not going to let him do that.
No, I trust this Jets defense quite a bit. I think that Bo Nix is going to be in hell.
All right, this is kind of the riddle game of the week, and we're obviously doing this with incomplete information, but we have the Philadelphia Eagles traveling to play at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do we do with this offense? Do we think AJ Brown plays? He retweeted some Eagles fan account with I don't remember which Dragon Ball Z character it was. In a hyperbaric chamber, basically like reoxidizing themselves and getting healthy, suggesting that he might be playing this week. Cardi has him projected in at what would be a very strong projection. I mean, the thing I would say is like, yeah, between Barkley or Breece Hall, I don't even think it's a contest. I think Barkley's like 5x the play that Breece is. And Godwin just continues to smash every week. Rashad White is fast approaching 0. Goddard did not get a huge price spike. Obviously less interested in him if AJ Brown plays, but still kind of interested in him if AJ Brown plays. We've seen Kellen Moore pump up a lot of tight ends.
I mean, I was all in on Goddard. I played him last week with Brown out, Smith in. I would happily do the same with Smith out, Brown in. I think really with Goddard, the key is either one out, and he becomes quite interesting part of the target tree. He might get out of control level chalk if both are out, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if Brown's going to play. Like, he didn't practice on Wednesday. That seems like a bad sign. I'm kind of.
I mean, are we down on, like, are we off on Hurts? Are we off on this game if Brown doesn't play? Because the Eagles' offense looked kind of brutal outside of like two broken plays to Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, if both don't play, I'm probably going to fade everyone involved, because then we're going to get massive ownership on Goddard. We're still going to get a big ownership on Barkley. I think just no matter what happens. And at that point, I would kind of just rather play for the offense to fail. Like, Goddard's not a cheap tight end, so I'm comfortable fading him at 5.1 if I need to. And then with Barkley, like, he's obviously great and he'll get a ton of volume in that scenario. But if you're the Bucs and you're facing the Eagles with no wide receivers, like with wide receiver 1, Britton Covey, like I'm just like 8
Covey's hurt. Covey's hurt, brother.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's Johnny Wilson, Paris Campbell, Jahan Dotson.
Paris Campbell, Jahan Dotson. All right. Yeah, that's not going to work. So
it's not going to work.
At that point, if I'm Todd Bowles, like, I'm just like, Saquon Barkley is not beating me. Like, I am going to stack the shit out of the box. Saquon Barkley, you're averaging 3 yards per carry, buddy. Someone else beat me. I don't care who, and I don't think that they're going to beat him. So,
man, Kellen Moore is pretty good though. Kellen Moore is pretty good at designing stuff. I probably wouldn't lump in, like, I'm probably not going to lump into Dallas Goedert at 20% owned. Famous last words. Again, given the context of tight end scoring. If you just told me nothing else about his efficiency, but if you told me the Eagles score 0 points as a team, but Goddard gets 9 targets, I still might play him with, like, that, the context of that information. That's how bad we've been doing this whole show. Have we mentioned a tight end yet? I don't think, no. I don't believe we've mentioned a tight end in any of these yet.
No, we have not. I do think that the Bucs receivers remain in play in this spot. Yes. It's going to be a pace-up spot with the Eagles. Maybe less so if all the receivers are out, but yeah, I think those would be probably the 2 plays that I'm most interested in.
Do you like Godwin or Evans more? Because this will be the like the week ends and we're like, obviously Mike Evans smashed at 5% ownership. Obviously, we all knew that.
Yeah.
You know?
Evans more. It looks like Evans is going to be considerably less owned, and the price is like $200 difference. So
yeah,
Evans
like way less owned. Like Godwin,
and it was like very foreseeable last week that Godwin would be the better play given the Surtain matchup. Eagles don't have anyone of that caliber, so
I think even Darius Slay is injured. Okay,
he's not.
Let's do it. The bonanza, the game of the week. The Washington Commanders against the Arizona Cardinals revenge game. I don't really care what the projected ownership is for these players. Jaden Daniels, Kyler Murray, Brian Robinson, Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, and Greg Dortch, assuming that McBride doesn't play. Is Tip Ryman literally min salary?
Well, it's Elijah Higgins is, I think, the guy you want to play.
So Ryman is going to play way more snaps. Higgins is obviously the better receiver, although Ryman, he was the 2nd tight end drafted, I believe. Not to say that Elijah Higgins is not a play, but I think Kyler doubles, Kyler singles, Jaden Daniels with Marvin Harrison Jr., Jaden Daniels with Michael Wilson, Brian Robinson Jr. on his own, Marvin Harrison. What we know about the new NFL is that if there's going to be a game that can score points, just take players from that game. I mean, it didn't work last week with Detroit and Arizona, but it didn't not work because either team played poorly. Kyler didn't play great in that game. There were some near misses, but basically the Cardinals just could not get the Lions off the field. The Lions were just running the ball 5 yards per carry with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I think they had like a 15-minute time of possession discrepancy. The Commanders will not be that effective at running the ball, and they also won't be that committed to running the ball. You could literally make an argument for Noah Brown and Luke McCaffrey for me in this game. I'm all in. Probably will have someone from this game in every team that I make.
Yeah, definitely going to be the game to play. You're getting pace. You're getting fun offenses. I mean, you're going to want to play Washington games, I think, every single week. Daniels, terrific. Higgins will be easily my most rostered tight end. I'm going to trust the process on that one. I think Tip Raymond's a blocker.
He did play 34% of the snaps. He's yet to record an NFL target.
Yeah, I'm Higgins lock button. I almost don't care what the ownership is. I like as a truther on him out of college, and I think this is going to be a spot for him. And tight end sucks. And then it's going to be, Daniels. Like, what would be the issue is, like, do you fully trust that Terry McLaurin's just back now?
No, I'm not using McLaurin with him. I think there's a little bit of a false flag going on because Cliff Kingsbury did dial up 4 deep shots in one game. 2 were misses, 2 were hits. Cliff is not going to do that as his base. And the combo of Daniels and McLaurin is going to way oversee the amount of time that Daniels and McLaurin are the optimal quarterback wide receiver pairing. Like, I would rather play Daniels naked. I would rather do Daniels with Chiefs players. I would rather do Daniels with 49ers players. I think this is a classic overstacking spot. And I honestly, you could do Daniels and Brian Robinson together. I would not do, in my opinion, I think that Jane Daniels and McLaurin is not that optimal.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I guess so. What's the big key then if you're doing that? Is it Ertz? Where are you going with Washington pass catchers, or is it just naked and you play a bunch of Cardinals?
I mean, if you are gonna play one, I think you do McLaurin, but you'll have to be very thoughtful about the way you do that. You'll have to do something else weird. You can't do Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, and Kyron Williams. You just can't be like, all right, stone chalk. Probably my favorite way to play this game, though, is Kyler and Marvin Harrison Jr., which will be owned, but takes up a greater amount of your salary. And I think Kyler will actually end up being significantly less owned than Jaden Daniels when we get there. He's cheaper. He projects for more points. People are, using the solver, using all this stuff. In fact, let me pull up the solver and run their optimal right now. And I'm gonna guess that that Jaden Daniels will be in it, and it'll sim all right, but you don't want to be playing the chalk construction. What about between Michael Wilson and George? Do you think either of them project well enough to be played?
Yeah, especially with no McBride, right? I like Higgins, but you can't just assume he's gonna walk into the same role that McBride had. They seemed like they were using Wilson as a chain moving type of guy last week. So that's probably the one that I like the most out of the two. I like Michael Wilson here.
So Jaden Daniels is in the optimal on the solver. Sims very well. I mean, look, this is the optimal lineup. Obviously, it's very early in the week. The cash game optimal is not going to sim for a 200% ROI or whatever. But then if I clear it and I lock in Marvin Harrison Jr. and I lock in Kyler Murray and I run the optimal, I'm going to get way better. Ownership. The sim ROI is going to go down a little bit, but not that much. Not really all that much. And again, this is very early in the week. The ownership, a lot of stuff to shake out. It still has Cam Akers in, and I think we're going to get Dameon Pierce back this week, which is basically going to send Cam Akers to 0 in terms of how they project. But that is just an example of a way that you can play the cash plays, play the optimal plays, and get slightly different. I think that's my favorite way to do it.
For sure.
All right. Let's do now New England and San Francisco. New England does not have one playable player. Are we doing the Ayuk thing? And what are we doing with Mason?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing the Ayuk thing. This is the only thing about 2024 is that I wish we could have gotten the Ayuk gets his ownership halved thing that we used to be able to do, but we don't get to do that anymore. Apparently, he's still going to be 16% owned. Kittle is also back at practice, and it doesn't look like he's projected in on what I'm seeing, but I think he's going to wind up actually being in, and that's going to change a lot of these projections for Jennings and for Ayuk.
Well, Jennings, I'll just
interesting for himself.
Spoiler alert, no shot do I play him. This dude could project for 26 points, and I'm so fucking spurned by last week. I won't do it. I love Mason. This ownership projection will be wrong on Mason because a bunch of that is going to flood to Najee and to Aaron Jones. I think Mason ends up being a smash this week. And I'm totally, even if Kittle playing in a weird way might make Ayuk a better play because ownership will go to Kittle because Kittle is eligible at tight end. And we need to find literally any tight end who is playable. Ayuk was like pretty open last week. In fact, he was open for what would have been the game-winning touchdown, and Purdy didn't pull the trigger. I don't even like Brandon Ayuk. In fact, I don't like Brandon Ayuk. He's like one of my least favorite guys in the NFL in terms of like just everything that has happened with him in fantasy. But if he is like going to come in this week at like 9% or whatever, I think he is likely a total giga jam.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, on Ayuk, I mean, Mason is, that's the one that's crazy. So we'll see what the ownership changes to. I bet that it's not going to be that high because we're going to get Najee sucking up a lot of that and other things are going to change. But at 6.7K, Jordan Mason does not catch passes. He's going to catch like 2. So if you have like a non-pass catching running back at 6.7 now, like he's kind of
he did run a bunch of routes last week.
Sure, but they're not scheming stuff up for him. Like he can catch a couple by osmosis, but he's not cheap anymore, man. He's like what? Is it like $500 less than Kyren Williams now?
Yeah. No, he's got to score, and he likely has to get the 100-yard
projection
bonus.
Is nuts. That's a full no thanks for me on that. Based on the archetype of player he is, like if you're gonna hit at that ownership at that cost, you kind of have to score twice or at least score once and hit the 100-yard bonus. And he's very capable of doing that, but it's at a point where like he could now have 80 and 1. And you're not even upset you didn't play him at that point. You're probably taking your chances on separating from him with Barkley or with Kyren or with other guys because the price catch is not that as much.
I think that generally aligns. Like I've been very pro him the last couple weeks. I still am slightly pro, but definitely not. I don't believe that this is all in. Kittle is probably the best 49ers play right now, given what we know, but I will need to adjust on that on Sunday based on what he is projected to be owned. All right. Clearly the most fucking disappointing team in football. The Los Angeles Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, Rashee Rice, great play. He'll just get 20 every game. It's like statistically impossible for him to get less than 20 the way this offense works. The deal here is the Kansas City Chiefs just don't care. Justin Herbert is like legitimately questionable with a high ankle sprain. I will say I'm going to be bag defending here on Kelsey because I think in a weird way, a blowout here for the Chiefs might really suit Travis Kelce because the conversation now has gotten so loud around the team. This might be, I think we have reached squeaky wheel season with Travis Kelce, where they're like, all right, like we got to get this dude a tud. Like we can't have played a month worth of football and not gotten Travis Kelce a touchdown. Not interested in Dobbins.
Then he can have 4 catches, 21 yards, and 1 touchdown.
Is that the highest scoring tight end in a given week? Pitts was tight end 1 in week 1, other than Foster Moreau with 3 for 32 and a touchdown. So it's definitely close.
Do you think Herbert plays this game or not?
The line is telling me he does not. A touchdown home dog is telling me that he does not, especially because I don't think the market is giving the Chiefs all that much respect, and they shouldn't be. The Chiefs are playing bad football. Mahomes is dead last in the NFL in ADOT. Dead last.
Yeah, Atlanta was what, a 4-point dog at home last week, and I think that the Chargers. Sorry,
3.5.
3.5. So if it's 3.5 for Atlanta at home against the Chiefs, I would say that the Chargers with Herbert are at least a comparable team to Atlanta, if not better. So Chargers with Herbert should be similar line, 3.5 world. It should be like 3 to 5. So yeah, if it's Heinicke, that takes, I think, Dobbins off the table. It takes McConkey off the table. I don't like Steele at that price.
Steele, you could play Steele you could play on FanDuel because he could definitely score twice, but they are not. He's going to run routes, but they are not looking at him. I will do exactly one say the line Bart Mahomes team this week, only because my sadness factor of Mahomes going for a 387 and 2 just in a random week would be so high if I didn't financially benefit from it in the DFS streets. But I now believe the Chiefs don't care and are fine being boring, and they're like, sure, we'll win another Super Bowl without ever getting out of second gear. And no, I wouldn't use the Chargers bring back at all. Like, their offense is just going to be so bad with Heineke.
Yeah, which is too bad. I would have been, if Herbert does play, I would have some interest in Ladd McConkey. He's actually had like a 26% target share this season. It's just been that they haven't really passed because they either blew teams out or they lost their quarterback halfway through the game. I don't think that this is the Chiefs of old. It's going to make them have to match points, but they'd have to probably match points to some extent. And maybe we get that 26% target share manifesting with 9 targets this week instead of 6. So I would have some interest, but probably not with Heineke. I don't think you can play anyone other than Rice.
You could do, this is maybe too galaxy brain, but you could do Worthy totally disconnected from this game just as a pure one-off, because he is the most likely guy to score 2 touchdowns on 4 interactions, carries, like basically does what he did in week 1. Very, very possible for him. I mean, they did use him as a rusher a little bit the way I thought he would, and his route participation is very strong, like stronger than you would think. And all right, we get to end with the game with another zero play game. The Cleveland Browns and the Las Vegas. I guess Bowers is a potential play. You got anyone else here that you care about at all?
Yeah, not a ton. I mean, the nice thing with this game is you do have the Browns, for some reason, playing fast and having a high pass rate, even though they can't pass. So that helps their opponents do things. So I think that puts Bowers in play. It, in theory, puts Adams in play. I don't know. Are you going to play any Browns? I'm probably not playing any Browns.
No, the only guy I'd play here is Bowers. Like, sharp people keep doing the Amari Cooper thing. He scored 2 touchdowns last week. Like, I'll leave that for people who understand game theory and math better than me. It's not my thing.
Admittedly, like, because of the pass rate and because of his scramble rate, like, Watson continues to project well at cost every single week, despite being the worst quarterback in the league. But I think we're getting to a point where there has to be some level of he's benched in the halfway through the third quarter risk with him. If this continues. So I'm probably going to sit the Watson Cooper stack out this week.
Yeah. Okay. Let's build our lineup and then we'll do our gold star plays and we'll get out of here. Yeah. I will give you the first pick, bud. You can have whoever you want.
All right. I'm gonna do my gold star play here. Let's just start him. I will take T. Higgins at 5.9K.
All right. I will do Kyler Murray, who is it's not going to be my gold star play because that's too easy, but I do think he is just like straight up the best quarterback play.
Nice. I like that. All right. I'm gonna make a strategic decision here to avoid getting Tip Ryman. I'll be playing the beloved Elijah Higgins.
I think we should spend a second on that just real quick. He was a converted college wide receiver. He's already run more routes than Tip Ryman. They drew up a cool touchdown play to him already. I think this is a legitimately good play. His projected ownership will go up. I think if people think you are doing a bit, it's not a bit. I think it is. I think it is legitimate.
He played at Stanford. He was a 6th round pick as a receiver. He's 6'3", 235, runs a 4.54. So this is like a guy who was really interesting in the dynasty community, where his last season at Stanford, he has 59 for 704. So like was a legitimately productive receiving player. And then they converted him to tight end. Like he's not going to necessarily play a lot in the run game, but I think he could run 60-70% of the routes in this spot where when they're passing to a tight end. Tip Ryman was the opposite of that. Tip Ryman is a tight end, but he was very much like a Chris Manhurst type of tight end at Illinois.
Yeah. I'm gonna knock our cheap defense out. I'm gonna take the Atlanta Falcons playing at home to the Saints. I think they'll probably be the cheap chalk defense this week. That just is gonna help us with lineup construction. I think they're fine. And now we have 6.3K left per lineup slot.
All right. Well, we have 2 plays at least that I think are not going to be that chalky in our lineup here. Maybe the Higgins team catches on. I don't know. Oh, we have the double Higgins. I didn't even realize we have a Higgins
double Higgins correlation.
So let's do our bring back with, I think, probably one of the chalkier plays of the week. Austin Eckler's out. Give me Brian Robinson.
Yeah, Brian Robinson. It'll be interesting to see if Brian Robinson Jr. and Najee Harris kind of split that 6K running back salary, which I think they might.
I vote Brian Robinson for the record if I have to choose between the two, just based on the game environment and based on who I think is better.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to take Rashee Rice, who I actually think will not end up being this owned. I think it'll be more like 15% because I think the whole conversation this week is going to be about, in fact, I already know the entire conversation is about how dusty and it's rightfully so. The Chiefs are dust, but Rashee Rice, I think, is like an 8,500. I think he's just as good on DraftKings as Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, basically.
Agreed. He's just Amon-Ra St. Brown now. That's what
he is. Yeah, that's a better. He's clearly not as good as those guys. St. Brown is the better comp.
And then I'll go with a guy. I think he's going to get squeezed. I know his ownership projection looks high in the stuff right now, but Brian Robinson is fake projected for 0 ownership because there's some sort of broken script right now. And then Najee is not projected high enough for what he's going to end up being. I think a guy who winds up in that 2nd or 3rd tier is going to be Aaron Jones, despite being in an absolutely phenomenal matchup, being in the revenge game spot. And I could envision a world where he comes in at like 9% or 10% instead of the 15%, just based on so many other mid-range price guys having injuries to their backfield mates. So give me Aaron Jones.
Love it. Yeah, this is I might just play this. This is just a good team. I'm going to take very easy. I'm going to take Jaden Reed, who is that's good. Well, he shouldn't count as a gold star play. He's too easy. So we have 5.8K left for a flex. Some of the options would be, let's see here, some of the flex options. So the aforementioned Najee Harris.
Can we just do the old sort by salary here?
Yes. Yeah, we can do the sort by salary. And we've got 5.8K. We could spend down what Travis Kelce fits. McLaurin, Pickens is interesting.
All right.
Hubbard.
Yeah.
Powers.
That's what I'm gonna go. Hubbard's interesting too, because we have T. You know what? Whatever. We're doing this for YouTube content. Chuba Hubbard is probably the better play, but we're gonna do the fun play. Give me George Pickens. Let's take that, pencil pushers.
George Pickens goes in the flex. All right, so that makes the lineup: Kyler Murray, Brian Robinson Jr., Aaron Jones, T. Higgins, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, Elijah Higgins, George Pickens, and the Falcons defense. That zeroes us out on salary. Let's do our flag plants and get the people on their way. What is your flag plant?
My gold star play of the week is T. Higgins. I thought he looked a lot better than his stat line suggested last week. He gets in a spot that I think has a lot of shootout potential and not going to have a lot of ownership. I think he is going to be a guy that I'm going to probably lock button into my lineups this week and hope he goes off. Kind of a little bit similar to a Dunze from last week for me, where he's just going to be in every single lineup I build. All
right, I'm going to take the easy way out, and I'm going to take 2 guys from the same game. Both of you are projecting for right about 10% ownership. I am going to do Aaron Jones at $6,400 against the Minnesota Vikings, and I'm going to do Jaden Reed in the exact same game. I think they are pretty clearly the 2 best kind of non-Giga Chalk, and some of the other spots being Giga Chalk will get us there as well. Guys, we are going to go ahead and get out of here. Make sure that you are signed up for Thinking About Thinking so you can get the Hitchhiker's Guide and the Sunday Drive. Make sure that you like this video. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back with you guys next week.